Welcome to the channel. My name's David.
My name's James.
And we have for you our first episode of Army Focus. Now, James, you and I have been talking about this for a long time.
Oh, we have.
And we've only just got around to doing it. There's been a lot of stuff going on at the moment, and we finally got around to our first ever Army Focus. And we are going to feature, James and I will probably feature in it first, and then we'll invite people from the community to come down for a couple of hours and talk about themselves and their armies. A lot of people have asked for this particular feature. I get so many emails asking me, I'm going to collect this army, what would you recommend? A lot of people are saying for additional content, it'd be good to talk about the players and the armies. So we thought, right, we'll just get this done.
Absolutely.
James and I are the guinea pigs. So we'll use this as a test. We'll see how it goes. And then if we need tweaking, please give us some suggestions. We'll try and tweak it to make it more applicable, I guess.
Yeah, yep. So it's fully useful information for everyone out there. Hopefully we can get all sorts of varied armies on. And it'd be nice to showcase some beautiful heresy armies as well. So
yeah, there is no doubt that if you're into heresy, you've generally invested a lot of money. You know, your average heresy army costs well over $1,000.
Yeah, thanks, Forge World.
Yeah, cheers for that. But it's a good thing because they're amazing models and they've got such rich history and fluff behind them, as we call it. And a lot of guys spend a lot of time painting their armies, and it's a sight to behold, a full painted army.
Absolutely. Yep. Particularly when you've been collecting it for years, as you say. And it is. It's nice to see them all laid out. So I can't wait to have a bit of a chat about them.
It's going to be great. So as I mentioned, we're going to use James as the first one in our Army Focus. James, can you tell us what glorious display we've got here?
Yeah, we've got my around 12,000 points of Iron Warriors.
Wow.
Which I've been collecting for 4 years. They weren't my first heresy army, but they were the first that was dear to my heart. And I think when you are collecting an army in heresy, the first and most important thing is you have to be passionate about them. So pick a legion that really speaks to you, both in terms of their aesthetic, in terms of their character. I'm a big fan of the narratives, the Black Books, of course, and the Horus Heresy novel series. And for me, the Iron Warriors are a really, really interesting legion. They have a very particular personality. They're not zealous for the Great Crusade. They're not particularly fervent followers of Horus when they do turn. And of course, they're one of the legions that are genuinely split. So if you collect Iron Warriors, you can play Loyalist legions, you can play Traitor legions, because there are so many Loyalist Iron Warriors elements, so you've got that flexibility as well. So, that's a real bonus for me of collecting Iron Warriors.
Yeah, the great thing about the Iron Warriors is they are, and I put this in the best possible way, they are fairly straightforward to paint. The Hazard stripes can be a little bit trickier to master, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But when they're on the table, they do look a little bit dull. But when you get up close, there's a lot of character to them. And they're a really fantastic looking army, I think.
I think so. I think their sort of dull, workmanlike appearance is one of the things that first attracted me to them, really. They give this impression of being a really gritty, battle-hardened army, which I really like the style of that. So, they were ideal for that, from my perspective. And Yeah, I was inspired by Angel Exterminatus, the story of Perturabo, as well as Paramar, and inspired me really to go all out on the Iron Warriors. And fortunately, they're pretty handy on the tabletop as well. They're certainly a legion which they are pretty competitive. They can certainly hold their own. They've got some great rights of war, some great legion-specific units.
They're quite well known for their firepower, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. One of their rights of war is perhaps not well loved in the community, the Iron Fire. It's not my particular favourite, but I have used it to great effect on several occasions. It is amazing how many barrage templates you can put down that certainly have an impact on the enemy. But I've always been a Hammer of Olympia man.
Yeah. Well, if we could take a quick look at Iron Fire, it's where you can put blast markers down, and then when you fire them in consecutive rounds, they scatter less, don't they?
They do, yeah, that's right. And once you've got some Iron Fire counters down and you're targeting near your own units, they don't scatter at all. Which is amazing if you've got Medusa's Master of Signal, Damocles Command, Rhino, Perturabo himself, particularly if he deep strikes in and guides the barrages in himself, as well as his own barrage. I've seen Iron Warriors armies put 8, 9, 10 barrage markers on in the first shooting phase. It is hideous. But I've always seen this army more as a sort of siege assault battalion, really. I'm an aggressive player. I don't like to sit back and just barrage. It can be fun occasionally, but I like to get up close and personal usually. So the Hammer of Olympia is the rite of war I tend to find myself using a bit more.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about the Hammer of Olympia. What's involved in that?
You get an extra heavy support choice, which is nice, especially when you've got things like Iron Havocs and Tyrant Siege Terminators to fill your slots. You can assault after rapid firing your rapid fire weapons.
It's a brilliant role.
It really is great, yeah. Particularly if you're coming out of assault transports, come out, double tap, charge in. It's a disordered charge, but I find it still gets the job done, really. Yeah,
definitely. And one of the great things about the Iron Warriors and some of their special units is the Siege Tyrant Terminators. I mean, who doesn't want a Terminator with a missile launcher strapped to his back? I mean,
yeah, they're such a brilliant all-round unit. Terminators, they're as good in assault as normal Terminators, so excellent.
Yeah.
And just that extra firepower on their backs, and they can move and fire.
Yeah.
They're great. And deep striking with Perturabo as well can be devastating.
Yeah, it's 2 shots in Strength 8 AP3.
It is, yeah. It's a full cyclone missile launcher, so yeah, they can fire their combi bolters as well.
Yeah,
and Perturabo has a Cognis Signum if you pair them up. So nasty.
You get an Omniscope as well. You can split one of them.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they can do all sorts. Yeah, and of course they've still got Power Fists and Chain Fists, so you can't even just assault them to get rid of them. They are just a fantastic all-round unit. They're pricey in points, but they deserve to be.
They need to be, yeah. But they are very, very cool. One thing I have noticed is that you've got a lot of, Spartan chassised vehicles. So you've got the Cerberus, the Spartan, of course, and obviously the Typhon as well.
Yes.
You don't see many Cerberus around, if I'm honest.
No, I mean, they're so outclassed by the Typhon.
Sure.
I think the Typhon arguably is maybe a little too good for its points.
Yep.
It's people used to moan about the Malcador Infernus. I think the Typhon is equally as bad an offender in terms of its ignores cover destruction. But yeah, the poor old Cerberus, it's just been outclassed by its brother tank. It's more resilient than a Sikaran Venator, but its firepower's not much more. So, but it does look very cool, and it's got a flare shield. I've used it before, and it's done a few things. But
it's a cool looking model, though.
It is. Yeah, I really love the Spartan chassis.
Yeah, definitely. And the great thing is that you've got one of the things that are quite famous for the Iron Warriors is the Iron Havocs as well. So you've got 10-man las cannon, 10-man missile launcher.
Yep.
Just set them at the back and fire down range. I mean, fantastic heavy support.
That's it, yeah. Particularly the guys with las cannons, again, a very pricey squad, but hitting on 2s, tank hunters, they just delete vehicles with every volley.
Yeah.
Especially if you combine them with an ammo dump or Kia Valen. If you're playing loyalists, 10 almost guaranteed hits. And with tank hunters, they are Very good. If you find yourself across the table from them, kill them with firepower because they will do the same to you quickly.
I was about to say, you know, these units like the Siege Tyrants and the heavy weapon squads, they are a bit of a target early on in the game, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. If I faced off against them, they'd be the number one target, no doubt.
But generally, you know, if you're going first, you'll put them in a reasonable position. You'll probably get 2 turns of firepower out of them,
Yeah.
and then they'll start to be depleted. But then, if your army, if your opposing player is focusing on the Havocs and the Terminators, they're not shooting anything else.
That's right.
And that's when the TAC units can get in place to score those objectives in Dominion and that sort of thing, and the other elements of the army can move in and kind of encircle the enemy, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. And particularly, I like to move forward aggressively with my Iron Warriors, particularly rolling forward with the normal Land Raider chassis vehicles like the Proteus and the Achilles, as well as the Spartan.
Yep.
And flying in with the Storm Eagle as well. Particularly works well with Hammer of Olympia, the Storm Eagle. Yeah.
It is, and the Storm Eagle was great. We see a lot of Fire Raptors on the channel because the Fire Raptor is such an amazing model. It's got so much firepower, and then with the waist-mounted autocannons, you know, they can fire independently. But we don't see too many Storm Eagles. But it's a shame because they can just deliver a really, really important unit to the heart of battle, can't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I like to actually put a big tactical squad in. Big tactical squad with extra close combat weapons, Vexilla, Sergeant with Combi Plasma, Power Fist. They can pile out and double tap their bolters, charge in. They've got the extra hand weapons, so they're still getting a lot of attacks.
Yeah.
And got a tendency to put a Warsmith and a Forge Lord in with them as well. So
it gets worse.
Has stubborn leadership 10 with a Vexilla and rad grenades. So yes, and crucially, it's a scoring unit.
Yeah.
And they're just tactical Marines, but they are very good.
It's a lot to deal with, though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you really want your reserves to come in if you've got a sort of unit like that. It's not quite a Death Star because they are just tactical Marines, but it's very good for delving deep into your enemy's deployment zone. You can destroy units and claim objectives.
Yeah. One of the other great rules for the Iron Warriors is that they don't suffer casualties for shooting. Sorry, leadership for shooting, negative modifiers rather. That is a fantastic rule.
Yeah, for claiming objectives in the end game. It is fantastic. Yeah, if you can get a tactical squad that's safe from assaults because there's no enemy anywhere near, it's so hard to remove them. You have to wipe them out.
Yeah, so many late games like Dominion. Later on in the games, like turn 5, there's a couple of units left on objectives, and your plan is to shoot them, get them to fail leadership tests, and run off, and then they can't claim at the end of the game. You know, and it's such a great tactic, particularly if you're struggling for stuff to destroy at the end of the game. So you tend to go after the objective holding units. But that rule for the Iron Warriors, it just keeps them in place, and they are an absolute pain to shift.
Oh, that's it. One tactical Marine left, and he's not running unless you assault him. Yeah, it is excellent, and it's also good for your heavy weapon squad sitting at the back as well, because if you wipe out half the Iron Havocs, the rest won't run. So it's just a great piece of rules writing, I think, there for the Iron Warriors, and excellent.
We've seen it so many times where a full squad perhaps loses, just enough to make it that 25% check. They're close to the board, and all of a sudden, that's a 15-man or a 20-man tech squad or a really, really important squad just ran off the board because of that leadership test. It doesn't always happen, but when it does, that's 200, 300, 400 points just run off the board from 2 dice.
Yeah.
It is, your heart sinks when that happens.
Absolutely,
it's horrendous. It's happened to my Thalax tons of times. A full squad of 9, 550 odd points, 55 points for a squad of 9 tooled up, lose enough to take a morale check, 3, and then they've run off the board.
It is. It's painful to watch. Fortunately, the Iron Warriors don't have to
No, it's so good.
I miss it when I'm not using it. I really do.
It's in a game that's governed by dice and random effects. It's nice to have a little bit of stability and predictability in an army, knowing that if you're going to go to that objective, or you're going to do this, or you're going to pursue that particular unit will not go because of that reason.
Yes.
And then you can have to worry about other things. So it's nice to have something solid that you can rely on every single time. So I think it's a really great rule. I love stuff that doesn't... One thing I do hate about the game is some of the random elements, and if you can remove that, it makes your game a little bit more predictable, and you can look at other things rather than worrying, maybe that'll do this and it'll fail because of the random roll, whatever, and they'll run off. So it's really great to have that reliable kind of backup from the Iron Warriors. I think it's a very I don't quite know what the word is, but it's a very understated rule that's very important.
It is, yeah. It's just it's such a brief rule in their rules, and when you read it maybe the second time, you think actually that is very, very good.
Yeah.
Because the other component of it, they can re-roll pinning as well, which is always handy, and Wrecker, which is very, very situational with grenades and melter bombs. We don't see that many fortifications in use particularly. No. So yeah, that's it's balanced out, that rule, I think, because the other side of it's not particularly great. And of course they have the bitter end as well, which can bite them.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah, they are stubborn. They don't know when to quit. So
I was going to talk a little bit about that Wrecker rule. That's a bit of a hangover to their purpose. They're great at bringing down fortifications.
Yeah, that's their job.
And it's kind of a bit of a link there. You kind of look at it and think, well, Wrecker, I'm not too worried about it. You might come across the odd fortifications you mentioned, but that's more of a fluff extra rule more than anything else.
It makes a lot of sense fluff-wise. So yeah, perfectly happy with it. I just don't think I've ever used it.
No.
One day someone will field a bastion or something, and I'll be able to charge it with melter bombs.
Well, maybe
live in hope.
Well, maybe when the later Black Book comes out and it covers a Siege of Terror, it might come in. There might be you might get a release from Games Workshop Forge World for some extra fortifications and stuff, and we might see more games where fortifications are used a lot more, and I guess the Iron Warriors will be perfectly placed to deal with them, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows? Next, we're going to talk a little bit about Perturabo. He is the Primarch of the Iron Warriors.
He is, and what a monster he is. He's fantastic.
He is cool.
Not just in terms of his rules. I think, going back once again to the Heresy novel series, I think he is a very, very interesting character himself. His particular demeanour is a reflection of his legion, as is usual for a Primarch, but he's just a very interesting guy, capable of incredible rage, but also a polymath, a genius. So that's really one of the things that inspired me to play Iron Warriors, Perturabo himself. And when he arrives on the table, he makes his presence felt. He is amazing. I think personally one of the best.
I think his model as well, in particular, is really cool. I love his armor that he's in.
Yep.
It's very bespoke. It's really heavy. He gets nicknamed the Potato King as well,
yes,
which I think is a really great name to describe him. But I think one of the bones of contention, though, is his hammer.
Right, Ferris's old hammer.
Yeah, Ferris's hammer. Poor old Ferris. I think there's an issue about he strikes at Initiative 1, whereas Ferris strikes at his initiative.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when Ferris has got it, it's not unwieldy. But it is for Perturabo for some reason. Maybe Ferris is a bit stronger, much as I hate to admit
it. maybe. But yeah, he's got the really cool hand cannon, which looks great. And just the fact that his original model is set atop one of the Cerastus Knights, isn't it? His model base.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine Perturabo coming up and just swinging that hammer and bringing low a knight, and I think it's a really fantastic kind of image for him. Yeah,
the iconic image for me was the Siege of Hydra Caudatus at the start of Angel Exterminators, when the Iron Warriors are assaulting a fortress held by the Imperial Fists, and it's not going great. It's going okay. They're scaling the walls, and Perturabo just drops onto the battlements and just smashes everyone to pieces. And just thought, what a badass.
Yeah.
He's amazing. So,
he is pretty cool.
And that's how I try and use him.
Yeah?
Yep.
Now, Perturabo is usually found surrounded by his Iron Circle, which are these kind of like Domitar-based models with a massive shield and a hammer and a Maximus bolter on their shoulder. Have you not been tempted by the Iron Circle for the army, or?
I think they're probably on the list. They're not high up the list, though, because, I don't know, I've never come up with a tactic to use them particularly.
Yeah.
I think Perturabo, my personal preference is to deep strike him with his siege tyrants.
Yeah.
He has an amazing ability where when he lands, he can call down his lance strike, which is excellent.
Yeah.
Doesn't count as him firing a weapon, so he can then use his Cognis Signum on the Tyrant Terminators. And they're hitting on twos then. He's there protecting them with his bulk, as you say, as the Potato King. And once they've blown something up from deep strike, they can then get stuck in as well. I mean, he's got an excellent stat line. He's very resilient. One of the Primarchs that has the 3-up invulnerable, which makes him
so good.
Yeah, very hard to to get through. He's also got a Nuncio Vox, so he can guide in the rest of the Iron Warriors, barrages, Cortex controller. He's just amazing. I really do think, and he's such a force multiplier as well. He gives all Terminators deep strike, all Iron Warriors Furious charge in the enemy deployment zone. So he is, he's a Primarch that's very, very tough and very effective himself, and he's also a really great force multiplier. And of course, he can still come in from reserve turn 1.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So the last FAQ did rein him in a bit. It's not all reserves anymore; it's just him. But still, that's a good rule.
Yeah, he's a formidable opponent, just like Horus. Can come in. Horus deep striking your back lines without scatter and a load of just staring Terminators is super tough. And equally with Perturabo and his Terminator complement, it's just such a formidable unit. It's one of those ones you just can't ignore when they come down. You've got to deal with it. And again, whilst Perturabo's causing a distraction, it's less firepower coming at a rescue force, and you can move in. So we see Primarchs on the channel a few times. Generally, when Primarchs go into combat, they kind of just tie each other for the whole game.
Oh yeah.
And we like to see Primarchs kind of not do that and go off and mincemeat other squads, which is quite interesting to see. But yeah, he's pretty cool. Comes in, deep strikes, Terminators, a lot of firepower, like you said. And we saw that to great effect recently. Well, I say recently, last year we did a game where we pitted your Iron Warriors against a household of knights.
Yes, yeah. Perturabo, he was amazing. So if you've not watched that yet, I would,
it's a good one to watch.
It's great.
Because James demonstrates exactly what he talks about. Deep strike, use the Havocs, the Terminators, and cause quite a lot of damage. We won't give it away if you haven't watched it, but he does reap a heavy toll.
Oh, yeah, he was amazing. He really was amazing. Yeah. Having said that, I must say I don't use him that often because we tend just to do sort of normal sized games. We don't use Lords of War that much when David and I play.
Only because I don't like it.
No, me neither, to be honest. So I think save it for the big games.
We do need some more bigger games.
Yeah.
We did see a bigger game recently between James and I. Commanded Iron Hands, and you commanded your Iron Warriors.
Yes,
we did a big tank battle on an 8x6, didn't we?
It was, and that was Hammer of Olympia, and I flew in with my Warsmith and my Forge Lord and the Tactical Marines in the Storm Eagle. So didn't do much that game, but
it was all right though.
Oh yeah, it wasn't bad. Yeah,
it was all right.
Okay.
It was very, very good. One of the things I love about your army in particular as well is that you've got quite a large wall of dreadnoughts there. You've got 2 levies, 2 Dorettos, and a couple of contemptors there as well.
Yeah.
For me, a Leviathan dreadnought, particularly Death Guard or Iron Warriors, that sort of thing, it's a massive bulk and it adds a ton of firepower and it kind of fits in with the aesthetic of the army as well, I think.
Yeah, it does. As I say, I see these guys as a siege assault battalion, and I think that's what Leviathans are designed for. They just wade through fire and just smash in. Yeah. Great. I'm a big fan of dreadnoughts. I wish I used the Deredeos more.
Okay.
I find because they're heavy support slot, it's a very popular slot when you have Havocs and Siege Tyrants and Sicarans. So maybe I should stomp out the Deredeos a bit more because they're a fairly handy choice. Not bad.
They can be very good. Just going to have a little bit more talk about the HQs. Yep. Obviously, the Iron Warriors are, I think. I know you said they can be both loyalists and traitors, but they are classically a traitor force, aren't they? But you do have Caer Valen in there as well.
Yes, he's the loyalist warsmith from Paramar.
Yeah, and there's lots of conversions for Caer Valen out there. There's not an official model for him.
No.
Which seems a shame, really, because it would be nice to get a loyalist and a traitor HQ from Forge World. But I guess it allows you to put your own slant on things. But do you use Caer Valen a lot? Is your preference towards a traitor or a legion or a loyalist force, or you kind of mix between the two?
I can go either way.
You don't
to
mind?
Be honest, no, that's it. I think both of the Iron Warriors' unique characters are very good. Caer Valen is obviously the better of the two. He costs more points. He's a full warsmith, and he has some excellent rules. Re-rolling the ones. He's got a Cortex controller, Paragon Blade, all the rest of it. He's very good. But Erasmus Golg is also very good HQ choice. He's not quite as good as a Praetor, but the ability to take Terminators as troops without having to use your right of war to achieve that is excellent, especially if you're using something like the Hammer of Olympia, where you have to take 3 compulsory troops choices. If you can turn those into Terminators, no problem.
Yeah.
Everyone likes more Terminators.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's good as well. The only problem with him, of course, is, spoiler alert, he does die quite soon after Respawn 5, and because I'm such a narrative guy, I can't field him in the late Heresy because I know Pollux has squashed his head.
This is true. You know, the story is evolving. You know, we are getting closer to Terra.
Yep.
You know, Black Library are bringing out books that are kind of chronicling. I can't exactly remember how many books are doing it. I think it might be 6 books. But we are getting closer to Terra, and we will explore that story and all these characters that we've collected over the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years.
Yep.
Some of them will die.
Yep.
Some will come to Ascension. You know, some will meet their opposite number from different legions across the battlefield, and I'm really, really excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, me too. I've got some ideas about a lot of the famous characters from the Heresy. I really want to see, what the future holds for them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. You know, I think for a long time the Heresy hasn't really moved forward very much, but now you can really feel it gathering momentum, really getting to that point towards the end. And there's lots of rumours, which I'm not going to start spreading, but there's lots of rumours about lots of different models coming out, and maybe demonic versions of the Primarchs and stuff, which we're really hoping to see. You know, maybe 2-3 years down the line. I still think in the Heresy in general, there's a whole ton of models which need to come out.
Yep.
Dark Mechanicum are coming up next, which I'm really looking forward to. And I can definitely see a lot of people collecting a bit of Dark Mechanicum and allying them with Iron Warriors in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the perfect match, really, isn't it? In fluff-wise and and for utility as well. Great.
I think it'd be quite cool, and in particular as well, you know, they might have to change some of the rules because, you know, you've got Cortex controllers as standard on some of your models.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to see how the Cortex controller rule changes or merges with the Dark Mechanicum stuff. It might not be the same game mechanic, but and this is not based on anything, it's just my own sort of ramblings really, but it will be interesting to see if that develops with books later on and see how that works out. But it could be quite cool to see some Dark Mech mixed in with the Iron Warriors. I think we'll see a lot of that in the future. Moving on a little bit, you know, one question which I'm going to ask everybody that comes on the channel to do this feature is that your hopes for the Horus Heresy and maybe your armies, you know, what are you looking forward to most? What are you looking forward to?
Personally, I'd quite like to see Dark Angels appear.
Yeah.
I've been waiting a while for them. I mean, obviously they have a very brief rules set, but for the first Legion, they are
they're lacking.
Heavily delayed, So it would be nice to see them. But personally, I just hope that the Heresy continues. It's my favourite game system that Games Workshop have ever done. I've played a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I love the Horus Heresy novel series and the Black books are so well produced. They're so chock full of information and they're fascinating. But it's the best game I think that Games Workshop have ever done. And I hope it stays the course. We keep going forwards and keep adding more units. And I mean, there's always a scouring afterwards, isn't there?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
There's so much to explore, you know. The one things I'm really looking forward to are perhaps some more models for rules they've written and not brought out models for. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But you are right. The story is so rich. I don't think Horus Heresy would be as popular if it didn't have such the rich history behind it in the books as well. And you mentioned earlier about Golg making Terminators of troops. I mean, who doesn't want an army of Terminators?
Oh, absolutely.
And the beauty with Heresy is you can more or less pick a Rite of War, which does change the absolute dynamic of the force, whether you're collecting Blood Angels or Ultramarines or Iron Warriors, doesn't matter. There are classic builds, I think, particularly with Iron Warriors. I think they get pigeonholed into a very specific build, and that's fine. If you want to play classic Iron Warriors or Blood Angels or Ultramarines, whatever, that's great. But with these Rite of Wars and all these different extra characters, they give you those little extra units here, something there. You can pretty much build any force you want.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when people first hear Iron Warriors, they immediately think the Iron Fire, which is reasonable because, you know, that it fits perfectly with the Iron Warriors fluff and it's very effective. A lot of Iron Warriors players use it. But they're equally capable of going forward in assault. In fact, their Legion rules really lend themselves to kind of anything really.
Yeah.
They're not got these like the White Scars have a very specific set of Legion rules. You know, if you really want to make use of them, what sort of army you're going to be picking. The Iron Warriors, they just have some decent all-round rules, which means you can go any way with them. And I love them for that. Really, it's great.
Solid, reliable, and predictable, I think, is a good some good words to associate with Iron Warriors. You know, we mentioned earlier about having some of the random results and losing units, but for me, they are an absolute backbone, and they kind of do what they say on the tin, to quote a famous phrase.
They do. That's it.
They are very cool. I think you'll agree, it's really great to see someone's collection laid out in a lovely looking formation to show its absolute majesty and to have a look at it. James, I really enjoyed setting this army up with you and kind of going through the units and talking about it.
Me too, mate. Yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to lay it all out on such a great looking board. And it's satisfying after spending so long on an army, tinkering with all specific characters and units, and sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, so it's nice to actually stand back and see the whole forest once you've finished filing off power sword guards and things.
We see a lot of photos on Facebook and Instagram where people have laid out their army on the kitchen table. Mrs. is cooking dinner in the background, and they've laid out their Blood Angels or their whatever's out on the table. So this was a feature we've been dying to do for such a long time, as we mentioned right at the top of the show. And we would love to do more of these. We want to try and get out one showcase a month. I will probably be next with the Mechanicum. I can finish the final 4 vehicles that I'm working on.
They're looking good so far.
So hard to finish. And then we would like to get you on the channel to film a game, of course. We'd love to have your army for the channel. But to get them in, lay it out, talk to you specifically why you collected that particular force, why you like about it, the rules. We'll talk about the rules, exactly like James and I have done today, but with your army. So if you would like that opportunity, then please email us. It's just david@the30kchannel.com. We're based just outside of Huntingdon, which is near Peterborough, and we'll perhaps need you we've only been here for about a couple of hours, haven't we?
Yeah, a good time.
2-3 hours. We'll try and make a bit of a day of it. We'll perhaps maybe get a game in with James or I or something to make it worth the trip, and then we'll do your army showcase, and then we'll film it and stick it out on the internet for people to see. I think it's really, really important to share your hobby, and a lot of the time you see on Facebook in particular, someone says, "Oh, I'm going to collect this particular army. What would you recommend?" And I get that emailed to me quite a lot, and my answer is always collect the army that you want to paint and play.
Yeah, you've got to be passionate about your army for whatever reason. If you like the rules, if you like the way they look, if you like the background and the character, preferably all of the above. And then you have passion for it, and it will encourage you to keep going and build your army up and play as much as you can. So
I think that's a really key point. I think, and I don't wish to generalise, but I think a lot of people, and I do this. I write a list, and then I buy it, I paint it, and then I play with it. But a lot of people are unsure about the rules, or they're unsure about how to build a particular list. But I think the reasons why you build the army have to be, as James mentioned, they have to be personal to you. You don't have to write. Cookie cutter was a bit of a thing years ago in 40k, wasn't it? Where everyone was kind of collecting exactly the same list. If you collected Eldar or Tau or whatever, then you had a very particular list. But I think the beauty of the Heresy that we talked about earlier is that you can have an army of Terminators. You can have an army of tanks in armoured spearheads.
Yep.
Or you can do destroyers, or you can do whatever you want. Or we see a lot of Imperial Fist Breacher armies, which I think are just absolutely super cool.
Oh, yeah.
They're really great.
Oh, it's an Iron Warrior, I should probably say. No.
So that is my advice. Collect the army that you want to paint and play. And if you are collecting what you want, then you will pursue it. There's so many armies on trading sites that are halfway through because they've lost passion.
Yeah, that's it.
Can't be bothered, and they just get sold, which is a shame.
That's it. You need to keep that passion going. And as you say, if you have an army in mind, then you can always expand it. So you can think, oh, now I can do this style of army. Now I can do that style of army. And in the end, you'll end up hopefully with an army where you can play it all sorts of different ways and still enjoy it. And Yeah, and still be passionate about it after years.
Yeah, and that's exactly the key. I used to go to a lot of tournaments, not so much now, but I am trying to pick that up for this year and next. But you generally see the same people playing the same lists, and that's fine at a tournament. But I've changed my list a few times now. I played the Legio Subnautica for probably a year, and now I'll probably play the army I'm currently got for another year or so. And then we're going to move on to Solar. But it's good, like you've said, to have lots of different troops to choose from, units, and then you can vary it up.
That's it. And some days you can just go, I'm going to use some units I haven't used in ages, just to mix it up, and it keeps it interesting.
Yeah,
as well. So
and you will see that on the channel. You'll see James and I play each other quite often, and I think it's fair to say, James, you've got quite a reasonable collection. I think that's a fair word.
Yeah, there's a few legions I like the character of.
But the beauty about the armies that James has got is that there are 5, 6, 10,000 points of whatever, and we can pick and choose and showcase different styles of those armies, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah,
and it's nice to have that flexibility rather than just rinse and repeat all the time. Anyway, I think I've waffled enough about variation, so we would love to get you on the channel. Email us, contact us. We'd love to get you on. James, I've had an absolute blast doing this with you.
Yeah, me too, mate, me too.
Good stuff. All right, so we will hopefully see you in the next Army Showcase with my Mechanicum, and then after that, we will then hopefully see you on the channel with your Army Focus.